Matters radio show amplifies the voices and stories of African American women. We share actionable steps and insights that can improve our health and wellness. The phone lines are open, so you can call us at 215-634-8065 or toll free at 866-361-0900 with questions for me or today's guest. Today's episode is titled Motherhood Elevated, Education and Advocacy. We're spotlighting the power of mothers to shape their children's educational journey and to advocate for maternal wellness. So join us as we explore how mothers are customizing and creating their own curriculum for their children, empowering them with the tools for success. We'll hear from a guest who has firsthand experience homeschooling and leveraging community resources to ensure her children thrive academically. Today, we'll also delve into the impactful work of the Ron Brown Guided Pathways organization, which is dedicated to providing free higher education support to Black students and empowering students to pursue their dreams. Lastly, we'll round out the episode with a focus on legislative advocacy aimed at decreasing maternal morbidity and mortality rates in Pennsylvania to ensure the health and well-being of mothers and their infants. We're covering a wide spectrum of advocacy for healthy children today, from the womb and infancy to fostering educational empowerment. This episode is dedicated to celebrating the resilience and agency of mothers to nurture the next generation every step of the way. So let's begin our Speak On It segment. I want to introduce our first guest, Barbara Martin Ellis. Barbara is an education advocate and member of the Ron Brown Guided Pathways support team as a college access advisor. The Ron Brown GPS program is designed to help college-bound African American high school juniors and seniors navigate the admissions process. She's been an advocate of student and community-led education, having homeschooled her sons who are now students at the Harvard University. She's taught private school students on Philadelphia's Main Line, facilitated AP and economics courses with homeschoolers, and directed a workforce development initiative that empowers teens in leadership and civic engagement in West Philadelphia's Promise Zone. She has most recently served as the director of a pre-law fellowship, coaching underserved applicants through the law school admissions process. Barbara enjoys helping young people find resources that help them thrive. And as a personal passion project, she researched and posted free academic, extracurricular, and summer opportunities across social media for years, gaining thousands of followers. She's currently a community journalism fellow at Philly Cam, where her radio and television work centers the voices and stories of Philadelphia teens. She holds an MSED from the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education and a Master's in Writing Studies from St. Joseph's University. An animal lover, she lives with her husband, 3 dogs, a cat, in a 160-year-old farmhouse near Philadelphia. So welcome to the show, Barbara Martin Ellis.
Thank you so much.
Yes, quite an impressive bio of the work you've done and your accomplishments. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I wanted to start out today by kind of referencing a study published in the Journal of Black Studies, which found that Black families choose homeschooling for a variety of reasons, including dissatisfaction with the quality of education provided by traditional schools, concerns about racism and discrimination, a desire for a culturally relevant curriculum, flexibility to address specific learning needs. I know increasingly nowadays people are concerned about safety. Can you share with us some of your reasons for deciding to homeschool?
I think those all check the boxes. Initially, I just couldn't understand looking closely at my family, but broadly, whether it's a rural community or a national community, I just couldn't understand why our students fare so poorly in some environments, not all, but some, and particularly Black males, why they were always, the ones who had to go to, you know, I just didn't understand it at all. And, but as far as the seeds of homeschooling, I don't think it was unusual. I had a cousin who was homeschooling her children in the 90s, and I don't think I realized it. It was just not foreign. She was in California. Her daughters are thriving now. They're in their 30s and entrepreneurs and business owners and teaching but I just couldn't figure out what happens when we turn our kids over. I'm not anti-school, but I just couldn't figure that part out.
Right. It didn't make sense that they were not capable, I guess, is what I'm hearing you say. And so you set out to find a solution for your family that works. So that's great. I know that many of these homeschooling families feel that the homeschooling process allows them to incorporate culturally affirmative and representative aspects into the children's education to give them a sense of identity and pride. Can you share how homeschooling allowed you to incorporate cultural relevance and whether you felt like that was an aspect that was important to your family as raising African American children?
It was, and I never wanted my children to think that they were exceptional. I don't believe in child prodigies, but I wanted them to see people doing the things that they were interested in. So it was important to me to get them in front of people. So before my son went to Juilliard Pre-College, his long-term bass instructor was Joe Conyers, who's the principal bass at the Philadelphia Orchestra. John Christmas is an African-American lacrosse player, and he had started a nonprofit, and they trained under him for a while. When Drexel has a program, I think it's called the Bridges program now, where students starting their sophomore year in high school can take one free course per term. And so they took a African American history course and a subaltern studies course, which is like it talks about the history of countries south of the equator with Dr. Alden Young, who's now at UCLA. And I just felt that it was important for them to get their history from him.
It's interesting because I've thought, I guess informally, I'm not an academic in this area, but I know in medicine there is a clear achievement gap that seems to have developed even amongst Black students between those who are like descendants of American slaves and people who were, maybe first or second generation African students. And I wonder myself if part of it is what you said, where you've experienced seeing people operate in all levels of society, and that empowers you in some way that can be difficult to measure the effect, in terms of.
I didn't have a college degree until I was 41, so my kids were in middle school. I was able to do that because my husband worked at St. Joe's, and so I was able to get the degree for free. And then I went on to get the master's degrees, but it didn't mean I couldn't see. It didn't mean I couldn't, I was incapable of not paying attention. And so some of the people who came into our lives, like when they were very little, I looked around and everything I picked up was made in China, whether it was the toaster or my shoes or something. So I was like, y'all need to learn Mandarin. And so one of their first teachers was a St. Joe's college student from Singapore. She spoke English, but she was culturally Chinese. And one of the things she said to me, and they might have been like 2 or 3 at the time, she said that in Singapore, in 3rd grade, they make you take a test and you're going to college or you're not. And so it's not unusual for parents to have their kids 2 or 3 years ahead by supplementing what they were doing at home. And I asked her, didn't you miss out on stuff? Wasn't that always hard? And she was like, that was just the culture. It wasn't hard because everybody was doing it. It was just customary. And she was like, and I didn't know that I was ahead until I came to America and realized that the math that I was doing in my freshman year was the same math I was doing in seventh grade
Right.
back.
I don't know what Singapore math is, but it's a thing.
Yeah, but I just, yeah, I kind of looked at, I Googled like where are students performing well, and there were like these, I think it's a TEMS test, I'm not sure, but there are these global tests and they tell, how students are doing in certain things. And I was like, you know, if it works for works, and sometimes
Exactly.
she'd go home and bring back in her luggage little workbooks for us, and I was grateful. So
That's great. Well, you're listening to WURD Radio 96.1 FM and 900 AM, Philadelphia's premier source for news, information, and community engagement. This is a station identification break. WURD Radio is proud to serve as the voice of the African American community, amplifying important discussions like this one and empowering our listeners with knowledge and inspiration. Stay tuned for more enlightening programming. And if you have a question for today's guest, please call in at 215-634-8065 or toll free at 1-866-361-0900. Feel free to leave a comment for Her Health Matters on our Facebook page at Community Hero PA. So back to our conversation. Barbara, can you tell us some of the challenges that you faced while you were homeschooling your sons, and how did you overcome those challenges?
well, obviously finances are a challenge. My husband, my children's entire lives, he worked multiple jobs. And
Mm.
so that was something that I was always aware of, and something that I would reiterate to them, like, daddy's out working. We don't see him on Friday night or on the weekends so we can do this. And
Mhm.
so I personally felt like he's out there working, like we can't, there's an obligation for us to not sit around and watch TV all day. Um,
Right.
but then the flip side of that is that I often felt, or I feel like I might have I was the first person to wake up in the morning, the last person to wake up at night, but because I wasn't bringing in a check, it felt like my work wasn't as valuable. Yeah. And I think, that happens with women a lot. We erase ourselves. And so, fortunately, my husband always saw the value of my work, but even like within close family, it was kind of like, why are you making that man work so hard? I'm like,
Right, or must be nice. I think
right.
sometimes culturally we have been forced, maybe sometimes, that's a whole different discussion. Like we get too accustomed to a certain kind of cultural standard, and unfortunately for children, we say we prioritize children, but a lot of times when we look at society and the things we really place value on, that role of raising children and really guiding and nurturing them, it isn't as valued work necessarily as other types of work. So it's great. It sounds like the whole teamwork makes the dream work thing, and sadly we are seeing a lot of the negative outcomes of when we're focused on the type of work that generates a paycheck, and how when that there's like not that balance in the whole system, then you see the effects in the younger generation. So I value I have not been one of those mothers. That's not the path that I took, but I know it's so important. Like if one of the parents is not doing it, someone else needs to do it, because it's not work that can go undone. So I think it's great, and I think it's great to share your learning experiences with others, and help people in various situations who may think, I happen to have a lot of quite a few homeschoolers in my community. My religious community has a lot of homeschoolers, and so it's not foreign to me. But I think a lot of times people feel like they can't afford it, or it's just not something that's within the realm of possibility. But what you describe is,
Fortunately, America being we buy a lot of stuff.
mm,
Get rid of a lot of stuff. So pretty much all of my kids' toys, their science experiments, are stuff is stuff I got from thrift stores, stuff I got free off Craigslist, free. So that's the upside of people working and accumulating and then needing to have a garage sale because they got too much stuff. So
right. Well, what would you say are some of the, like the personal growth and also for yourself, the academic growth that, well, not so much for yourself, but for your children, what you have observed in them? I don't know what phase in their educational journey you started homeschooling. Has it been from the beginning?
they
And
we started homeschooling from the beginning. Before they were too old to attend, I would volunteer because I just couldn't, I don't remember nothing about high school earth science. Like I can't do this. And so I started volunteering in a homeschool community. And what I realized is that I didn't have to know because there are so many people in the community who know stuff, whether, somebody can teach them how to fix an engine or somebody can teach them, about everything. And people are really very generous with their time. And also Philadelphia has a ton of resources, nonprofits, and when we couldn't afford something, we would volunteer. And that training,
Mhm.
they were volunteers at the Academy of Natural Sciences when they were 6 and 8 because we couldn't afford camp. But they had to be trained to teach people about the dinosaurs. So, and my son was interested in dinosaurs and I wasn't. So, so it allowed them to be in a space where he can get what he needed. And, and is at a class. He knows a lot more about dinosaurs than, I did or did at the time. But I also found that, so we started at the beginning and then in middle school, when I was in grad school and working and teaching, I sent them to school for a year and a half. My youngest son really loves math. He's a math major right now. And he scored in the 99th percentile of his SSAT to get him into this particular school, but they put him back 3 years because they said, you are homeschooling. And so he needs to learn how to do school. And I'm like, we don't live under a rock, but they did. And it was kind of a wasted year. And so but talking to other families, I don't think that's unusual where your kid, what they're capable of. They're being assessed on something, a 15-minute exam, and it affects the rest of their lives. So that gaslighting, again, I'm not anti-school, but I do think that happens a lot where people, I guess it's the equivalent of the undermatching. Students are just not seen. I don't know what it is. Are they not seen or encouraged to achieve, or I don't know, but yeah.
Part of what I'm hearing is analogous to the idea of the work that generates a paycheck versus the work that generates, a really whole productive human being, and how it's more difficult perhaps to measure that along the way. So in the same way that a parent whose job or primary work is homeschooling or raising their children, that might not be as valued. The academic work they did in their classroom of the world, learning and creating different learning opportunities in a number of different experiences that are outside of a structured classroom, wasn't as valued because we're not accustomed to measuring in that way. Perhaps maybe it's part of it.
When I've asked my sons this question, they said that they realized that they were able to go deeper, and I wasn't taking them deeper. I felt like my job is like a personal trainer or like a vocal coach, kind of watching, monitor, oh, you're a little off key right now, but just do one more set, because that's really where the development happens. I think at the beginning, we're excited about a thing, and then it kind of becomes mundane, but that's really that day-to-day, those incremental things, that's really where, the development happens. And then, but a lot of that is not fun. And so but that's where the coaching and I feel like that's where a lot of my work is, and it's where I'm challenged now, because there's these messages, just get kids through, just here's a checklist, just get them through. But homeschooling was so fundamentally different in that it was work till mastery. If you want to study black holes or whatever, I just need to find you the resources and get you in front of somebody who can have that conversation. I don't know what they're talking about half the time. I don't, but I can Google, I can search, I can tap into a community, I can ask questions and help them connect with people who can do that. There was one retired physician, Dr. Steinberg. I have no idea. He tutored them in math and science for free 4 years.
Wow.
But not just them, other students in the community.
And that really brings in the point about leveraging community resources and other initiatives to support your children's educational journey. Because how do you find an expert to tutor your child for free?
It's a Yahoo group. It's a Yahoo group, and Facebook has these communities. When I talk to other homeschool moms, it's like our jobs are just research. We're just researching,
right? It's sort of like a social worker for your particular child to research and investigate these different resources. That's great. And also great that you decided to kind of make sure that that information was being shared so that it didn't necessarily benefit your children alone, but other people could.
And I think that same idea of like the community resources. I have a cousin who is finishing her sophomore year at Yale right now. And when she was in middle school, I don't K-pop or whatever, she decided that she wanted to learn Korean. And so, I can definitely not take credit for, she had the whole family and a community, but I was able to find a study abroad program, a free study abroad program where she was able to go to Korea, and now she's fluent. During COVID, she said she wanted to do pre-med, but she wasn't sure, do I want to be a psychiatrist? Do I want to do whatever? And everything was shut down, but I knew she likes to talk. And so I worked with her, and she had like a YouTube channel where she interviewed different Black women, and asked them about what their somebody in medical technology, someone in clinical therapy, just see what their jobs were like, and hopefully it benefited other young people too. But she went to a traditional brick and mortar school, but it was just, how can we find those resources to really supplement what she's doing too, that she might not have gotten in school?
Right. Well, I know in the course of this conversation, you've dropped a couple jewels here and there. But just to kind of bring it together, what advice do you have for mothers who are considering alternative education paths for their children? I know you spoke with our show's executive producer and mentioned that sometimes it's not an either or situation, but a yes and situation. Could you elaborate on that? And you touched on some of these ideas, but just to...
Yeah, I think, if your kids are in schools, again, I'm not anti-school, but if they are saying, I have an interest, helping them find that. And sometimes, things can get expensive, but Philadelphia has free resources that people just don't know. And so for years, I think you talked about it in the middle, I had a social media page. I would get up in the morning and I would just find free things, free summer camps and tutoring and all of these things, but they're really quite abundant in the cities, free sports things. And so checking out those, and then also understanding that there is that ebb that, oh, somebody's excited about something. I want to take piano lessons, and they do that. And then after a month, they're not practicing anymore. And they don't, and I'm guilty of this. I have so many projects that I started, but really the development comes in that middle period before you have something to show for it. And that could take years.
Right.
But just to keep encouraging them during that period and understand that that's normal.
That's great advice. Well, before we shift our conversation to your professional journey, we'd again like to invite our listeners to call in with any questions about homeschooling, resources you may be looking to help support your children, or other questions for our guests. You can call at 215-634-8065 or toll free 866-361-0900. You're listening to the Her Health Matters radio show, airing on WURD Radio 96.1 FM and 900 AM, and streaming live on WURDradio.com. So you've been involved in various educational initiatives, including workforce development and leadership empowerment. What inspired you to transition into directing a pre-law fellowship, and how does this role align with your passion for education and empowerment?
Well, the thing about homeschooling is there's a hard end date. There's a date when your job is over. And so I thought, y'all are going to go off to school. I've always wanted to go to law school. I realized quickly that I couldn't put that financial burden on my family. It just didn't make sense at my age. But then I returned the subsequent summer. I did a summer program, and then I returned to direct that program a year later. It's a program that trains students in underserved communities to prepare them for the LSAT and to work in helping the people in public service law. But I thought, I'll go to law school, y'all go to school. One of them was clearly headed towards finance. One of them was going to be a creative. And then when we all graduated, we can reconvene. And they got to college that first month, and they put me on Do Not Disturb. And they were like, we are done. We are done. Hard stop. We had to live at home an extra year for COVID. We had lunch, and during our lunch, we decided that we're not doing this with you. And it was very painful for me. And my youngest said, I felt sometimes like I was an experiment. And they were like, I don't know how they feel about it now, but I was like, okay, Barbara needs to redirect and do something. They do answer my calls now.
And I don't think most children realize, like, every child is an experiment in parenting, because none of us have prior experience before we start. Each child is different, so it's all an experiment. Right. You try to learn from, good practices or your personal experiences, but yeah.
And I mean, and they were right. And as I said, I don't look at their Instagram. They're living their lives. We do check in often, but it just meant that it was time for me to pivot. And so working with young people is what I have in my head.
That's great. Mm-hmm. So what insights or strategies have you found to be effective coaching underserved applicants through the law school admissions process, particularly addressing challenges that they face?
As far as preparing for the LSAT, being disciplined and self-studying, that is hard. There are free resources, and a lot of the major programs, they do offer periods of free access for training, but trying to self-study is hard. So finding a community, the program that I directed, if there was a $500 deposit, and if you completed the program, that you'd be refunded. And there are free tutors and things like that for people who don't have the money. But so I would just say finding a community. I didn't mention earlier that there's a group of homeschool moms, and we've met, once a week for Black moms for over 7 years now. And I said they're at the crack of dawn, because most of them do work and homeschool. Mm-hmm. And just that community, the importance of community. I feel like they're my sister superpower, because we've cried together, we've shared information, we've helped guide each other's kids. But for the law school students, find a community and understand that it's hard, but in order to refine and not have to labor over things, get help.
Right. And it's interesting you mentioned the standardized test because I think across fields that is something that comes up, particularly for African American students over and over. Community Hero has a program to help people with these exams, the cost of these exams, but this is a hurdle. I know in medicine that the MCAT, even for high school, the SAT, these things are hurdles and really kind of acknowledging that, going in the process and developing some type of structured, disciplined practice to overcome whatever is going on with that test. There are some ways that you can improve your chances with it. So that's great because it touches a lot of different areas, not just law school. So just for a minute, if we can sort of pivot to talk about your being a community journalism fellow at PhillyCam, how do you amplify the voices and stories of Philadelphia teens through that work? And if you could tell us a bit about PhillyCam and
Voices and Block by Block are two community journalism programs through PhillyCam. Anybody can apply, and you tell the stories of your neighborhood. So I have learned so much about the beauty of Philadelphia. Sometimes the news, what they say, if it bleeds, it leads. But I have learned so much about what's happening down, the talents of, seniors in a nursing community, or,
just things too.
Yeah. So that's important. PhillyCam also has a free program for teenagers. If anybody, if they're interested in that and helping develop their media and production skills. But I chose my beat as teenagers because that's who I'm with all day, and I love them, and I think they're kind of fascinating. And as far as finding the stories, I just kind of backtrack to those organizations that I was sharing their free resources before anyway.
That is great. I know you're also involved with the Ron Brown Guided Support Pathway program, or GPS program. Can you tell us about this program and its mission and what inspired the creation of the Ron Brown Guided Pathway Support Program?
Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, GPS for short. Yes, GPS was started because Ron Brown is known for its scholarship. They give $40,000 scholarships to talented African American students. But what they found was that some of the students who came through their doors, they were being undermatched. There's a term in college admissions called undermatched, where these students could go to selective colleges, but maybe they didn't know how to prepare the kind of package. They were doing all the things, but maybe they didn't know how to refine their resume or, to do the things that could get them in more selective colleges. And what I think a lot of families don't realize is wealthier schools with large endowments can often be cheaper than even some of your local options.
I've learned that.
So that's what we do. We review essays, resumes, help students find colleges. This past week, I did 2 webinars on FAFSA because that's a thing this year, with the delays.
Right.
My colleagues we constantly have that. And then what I love about Ron Brown is that during the high season, we bring in advisors who are alumni. So if there is someone interested in pre-med, they're working with someone who's actually right now a resident at Harvard Medical School, and she goes deep for her students. And last week we had a seminar with an alumni, a recent Stanford grad, on scholarships, and he won all the scholarships. So that's what I love about it. But our community is virtual. And so students can sign up for help requests to work with me or one of the advisors, or there's this 24/7 community where they can ask each other questions. Students can get, answers in real time, and then scroll back for years and find information
is amazing. I mean, I don't know if everyone listening understands just the
And it's
power
free.
of this resource. Yes, that's people pay good money for this type of resource, for this type of advising, and not realizing that you could access it, especially for free. Then it further makes the playing ground uneven, because those with resources are paying for a coach, or someone to help their child with their own personal GPS
Yeah.
through this process. Or many of these preparatory schools, they have people who do this work. So this is
We view our work as the gap.
Ron Brown guided support.
RonBrown.org. Yeah.
RonBrown.org. Okay.
Yeah, we view our work as the gap, because a lot of high school advisors, they're just overworked. They're dealing with mental health and discipline issues. And so we just view our work as that gap to help get students where they need to be. Starting at sophomore year through senior year, there's no minimum GPA, there's no minimum test score, there's no like you have to sign up by this date. If students, enroll, then we'll support them. And in our top 10 schools, we have Howard and Harvard, community colleges, state schools. We meet students where they are.
That is great. Are there any upcoming events or campaigns that listeners should be aware of?
We have regular webinars. One of the things that we're constantly, we're launching or graduating a group of students. And so getting the word out, to sophomores and juniors that we're here and we're available is something that, we kind of have to do this time of year.
Right.
So,
it's a shame you have to market to give such a valuable resource. You mentioned, I think you said 50, did you say $40,000
$10,000 a year. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's the flagship. But and then we have the Leaders Network, which takes those students and then also other students who are called captains, and work with them throughout college, helping them get internships and mentors and things like that. And then I sit at GPS, where we're working with students one-on-one, or they can work with within the community.
Wow.
Oh, we do have, in addition to our webinars, right now, this week, we have partnerships with different corporate partners. So General Catalyst is a private equity firm, and students can work with them. There's a program we have during the summer, and I think they get paid $1,000 stipend or whatever, and they can learn about venture capital.
Wow. This is great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your remarkable journey. Thank you so much for the work that you have done and do. It's very impactful, not just the impact that you've had on your family unit and all of the work that they will do, moving forward. I would give you credit for that, but also in the impact that you're having on the lives of other teens looking to further their educational journey. So thank you so much for joining us. We are going to continue today's episode with Pennsylvania State Representative Gina Curry. She's going to update us about legislative efforts in maternal wellness, so stay tuned. I'm Dr. Safiyya Shabazz, and you are listening to the Her Health Matters radio show, your go-to destination for all things related to the health and wellness of African American women. We're broadcasting live on WURD Radio 900 AM and 96.1 FM. You can also join us online streaming at WURDradio.com. So let's continue this episode, Motherhood Elevated, Education and Advocacy. And we're moving into our Policy and Women segment, where our next guest, State Representative Gina H. Curry, brings a wealth of experience and advocacy to her role in the 164th Legislative District of Delaware County. With over 20 years in education and community service, Representative Curry champions equitable funding for education, economic development, and affordable housing. Prior to her election, she served as a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, small business owner, vice president of the Upper Darby School Board. Gina holds degrees in criminal justice and has worked extensively in the field of behavioral health. Committed to youth empowerment, she mentors in leadership development and serves as a Girl Scout troop leader. Representative Curry, or shall I say Soror Curry, is an active member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the EUPEAT Prison Education Advisory Board. You can correct me if I got that wrong.
No, you're good.
She resides in Upper Darby with her husband and 3 children. So we invite you all to engage with her and with us by calling in at 215-634-8065 or toll free 866-361-0900 if you have any questions for Representative Curry. So without further ado, welcome to the Her Health Matters radio show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Shabazz. I really appreciate it. Excited to be able to talk about what we've been working on this very important topic.
Yes. Well, just to provide a little context to the conversation, the Pennsylvania Department of Health describes maternal mortality as the death of a woman during pregnancy or up to 1 year following the end of pregnancy, regardless of the outcome of the pregnancy. So the term applies in cases of live birth, stillbirth, pregnancy termination, and miscarriage. So Representative Curry, before we dive into legislation, let's speak as Black women. In Pennsylvania, a significant gap exists and persists between the maternal mortality rates of white and African American women. However, mortality represents only a portion of the issue because for every one woman who tragically loses her life, many more barely escape the same fate, which highlights the urgent need for improved maternal health outcomes. What sparked your interest in advocating for maternal wellness?
Well, I will tell you, I am a mother of 3, and my husband and I, my late husband, we valued the space of that birthing space. So it was so special when we were going through it, and we knew that we were blessed to be able to have the opportunity to have 3 gifts in our lives. We had 2 children pretty much back to back, about 21 months apart. And then we had our last baby, about 7.5 years after the last one. And so we had a span of time of knowing what that birthing journey was going to look like. Just much like your other guests today, talking about education. Education is so important to us. And, thinking about that's what my platform has pretty much been. When I got in as state representative, I received a phone call from a nurse who had been working in labor and delivery over at Delaware County Memorial Hospital. And that was in January of 2022, I received that phone call. Mm-hmm. And the nurse, who I never got her name, never talked to her again, was like, Representative Curry, I know you are just getting in this position, but I want you to know that the labor and delivery department over here at DCMH, which DCMH is now gone, it's no longer, creating a huge desert, medical desert in our community over here in Delaware County. She said, you have to do something about this. So at that time, I was like, whoa, this is pretty intense. As a new legislator, I was like, oh, let me start digging around and finding out what's happening. And indeed, it closed at the end of January of 2022. And after that, I started doing some research around medical deserts and maternal health deserts in the Commonwealth, and found that it's much more common than we know. And it did create that, indeed, and it created what we call as a zone, because you could say, oh, Rep. Curry, you can just go across the line to, Penn or one of the others, or Mainline Health. Or you could go up to Chester and still have your baby up there, or Riddle in Delaware County. But what that means is access, right? We have a crisis in access. So understanding that Everybody doesn't have a car to jump into to get to their appointment. Some people are heavily relying on public transportation. And when you think about that mileage and the distance, I've done the math myself. I've done the mileage myself, leaving my home to get out to Crozier Chester or leaving my home to go over to Riddle. It's a distance. And
Right.
on public transportation or Uber or, Lyft, any of those things, it would be a real crisis, leaving women and birthing individuals in a space where they don't have the access. So it really was my chance to get on board and understand that healthcare and women's equity in healthcare it's a space that really needs a lot of work. So that was my start.
I'm glad that you took this on, and I know that you serve as co-chair of the Pennsylvania Black Maternal Health Caucus. Can you share with us some of the key legislative priorities and policy initiatives that the caucus is focusing on?
Well, just to give the listeners a little bit of a background before we jump into the legislation.
Okay.
Last year in 2023, my co-chair, Latasha D. Mays, Representative Latasha D. Mays, and Representative Morgan Cephas, who represents right here in West Philadelphia, we all came together. I was sitting on the Women's Commission Advisory Board to the governor, and I was also had a pretty big role as a co-chair already in the Women's Health Caucus. We sat down and we said, we need to have a Black Maternal Health Day at the Capitol. So we planned this along with the Women's Advisory Commission, Executive Director Mariah Hathaway, and we put together a day at the Capitol. It got so much buzz. There were so many stakeholders who came up and were involved. And we said, okay, from that excitement, we did some surveying and folks were like, yeah, we want to do more. And so 6 months later, we started the Pennsylvania Black Maternal Health Caucus. And we are so excited, Representative Mays and Representative Cephas and myself, to be able to have this subset of, the Women's Health Caucus. We work on a lot of things, but we knew that, we do a lot of reproductive justice work in the Women's Health Caucus. We knew that we needed every legislator to look at this issue because, we couldn't get caught up in the weeds of who was not going to do it because of certain political, decision making. We knew that this is a bipartisan effort, that in every area of this Commonwealth, folks are representing Black women and birthing individuals who are dying 2 to 3 times higher than their counterparts. And so without question, we had to start this caucus. And off of this caucus, we have 2 work groups. It's community engagement and a policy work group that meet regularly with stakeholders. And this is what is the basis in our foundation of this caucus. And we just finished, after that, we named the Momnibus 1.0. And that happened in March. We named 8 great bills in legislation to be able to combat and, with our goal of decreasing these numbers by 50% by in the next 10 years, 5 to 10, we really want to see a difference being made. It's going to take some time. It's going to take real efforts on the ground. We have a lot of grassroots stakeholders who are doing this work. We have support from across the Commonwealth, but these conversations are critically important to have with the Department of Health, the Department of Alcohol, Drug and Alcohol, the Department of Human Services. Everyone has to be on board. During the April 11th through the 17th, it was the Observance Week. We had 3 days of activities and we're still exhausted. So many stakeholders came to the Capitol. We had a fireside chat with midwives and doulas and folks that work in the maternal mental health space. We had press conferences and, lunch and learns and things like that where folks could actually get involved and have their questions answered and to really have input where we can work together. We can't elbow each other out of the way. It's
Right.
too much at stake. And so we have to come together, and we've really tried to bring folks and stakeholders from all across the Commonwealth, as far out as Erie in the West. Because a lot of times when you look at Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh, and you look at Philadelphia, you're thinking, oh, that's where most of the resources are.
Right.
But we know that those zones exist, those maternity desert zones exist outside of the epicenter of the resources. And we also know that even with the epicenter of resources in our more urban areas, women and birthing individuals are still dying.
Yes, at alarming rates.
At
Well,
alarming rates.
what you mentioned in terms of, the activities of just a week or two ago is one of the successes that I would count. Are there others, in particular, budgetary wins in these maternal child health advocacy efforts?
Yeah, so we know that our governor is committed to this, which helps us to really be able to get in and get this work done. Last year, in last year's budget, we were given 2.3 million to, do some things, set up a maternal health office that's directly impacting what's going on in the Commonwealth. And we were able to get another 2.5 this year. We still have to pass the budget, let me make that clear. But the governor's priorities include it. And so, when I think about the things that Governor Shapiro is doing in terms of prioritizing women's health, I'm excited. He actually, on this particular budget, he gave a budget line item to fighting period poverty and period justice. So he put $3 million into providing education and period products for women and young girls. And to me, that really states that we have a governor who understands that women's health equity is important, that he's prioritizing it. But we also know that we need way more funding than that. And so we are continuing to have conversations with the governor's office. I'm a member of appropriations. And so we are talking about the needs of the various organizations that are coming to us and saying, look, we want to have this put in place. We want to do this. We want to decrease these numbers. How can we fund this? And that's a big, big part of what this caucus is doing. So, we know that the budgetary priorities are there. We just have to get it across the line.
Right. Well, I certainly appreciate, as a citizen and as a woman, I appreciate the work that you're doing for Pennsylvanians and women in particular. How would you suggest that individuals advocate at the local level for maternal health improvement in those disparities? And
Yeah, so all of us are impacted, right? I'll just tell you a quick story. The day that we signed the act to have the mortality and morbidity reporting go from 3 years, every 3 years, to every year, which is going to help us decrease these numbers as well. Because if you know, then you're going to be able to put into what to do to decrease it, right? And so that day, that was October 31st, I'll never forget it. I got a phone call early that morning from my staffer, who sister-in-law had died at about 3 a.m. that morning in a local hospital in Philly. And I was devastated because, a lot of times when you're working and doing this work, you're doing it and you're doing it for the folks in your community. But for it to hit our office so closely, I want everybody to understand this is impacting folks closer than they know. And the joy, one of the things that I said up at the press conference, because Black Mamas Matter, they work on Black Maternal Health Week, right? That they brought that forward. And their theme this year was our bodies are still ours, right? That we still have our bodies, that they're our bodies. But last year it talked about Black joy. And I had to bring that theme back. When we are giving birth as Black women and Black individuals, we want to have joy in that experience like everyone else. We don't want to find out that we're with child, and then think to ourselves, oh my gosh, I could die. I remember in an article that I did for City and State, the interviewer asked me about my own experience, and I remember telling him that I remember somebody in the room saying, this is the closest that you'll come to death in your life, is giving birth. And this has been exacerbated for me, not only in my work, but really understanding and being close to folks and hearing folks' stories about the trauma and the traumatic instances that they have been through in giving birth on their birthing journey. We know that folks have lost their lives. We know that families are suffering. And you know what, Dr. Shabazz, when we lose a Black mama, we really are, our communities are impacted. Right. We have partners and papas and fathers and grandpops and grandmothers who then have to step in and raise children. This is impacting our community more than anyone else's community. And to me, I take that personally. Yeah. I was blessed to have 3 children, but guess what? I have 3 children who are possibly going to have children. Right. And so my legacy is not out of the woods. When I think about the statistics here in Pennsylvania, I'm scared. I have a fear factor that pushes me to make sure that we put bills in place, and I know our time is running out, but just to tell you, the Momnibus puts bills in place to cover doula coverage for Medicaid. We want to get blood pressure cuffs for folks on public assistance and for private insurance. We got to get these managed care companies on our side to be able to do things. We know when you look at the news, if you just Google, you will find out that there's women who have big titles who have died. Right. That doesn't protect you. Your money can't protect you. That's right. Exactly. We're talking educated. We're talking socioeconomics. Way above. We're talking gold standard insurance. Still died. There's a problem, Dr. Shabazz. What are we going to do? And I also, the last question that you asked me, the Divine Nine, you and I are both apart, Soror. The Divine Nine has to get in and get this work done. This is our community. All the sororities and fraternities, Jack and Jill, we've been talking about it. Jack and Jill, the sororities, were doing that work. But these are our communities that need. All got to get involved. That's right. And everybody else who's on the ground, make sure you're looking at us. Look us up. Follow us at PA Black Maternal Health Caucus.com. Follow us. Get on to our community stakeholder meetings. Be a part of the solution. Well, thank you so much for that. And we are definitely supportive. It sounds like there's so much work to be done. We don't need to elbow each other out of the way, but to link arms and get the work done. So thank you for joining us and for the work that you're doing. We'll be looking for updates on the Momnibus. Yes. And legislation that affects the community. So as we conclude, we really, really are so grateful for your dedication to improving maternal health outcomes and education opportunities. And as we wrap up this episode of Her Health Matters, I want to express my gratitude to our incredible guests, Barbara Ellis, and you, State Representative Gina Curry, for sharing invaluable insights and experiences from the power of homeschooling and community empowerment to highlighting the vital role of legislative advocacy efforts to improve maternal health outcomes. This conversation. Dr. Shabazz, just remember, and to all the people who are listening and who will see this or listen to it, remember, when we fix Black maternal health, we fix all maternal health. When we fix Black maternal health, we fix our community health. This is critically important. We can't let it go. It's hot right now. It's big. There's still things going on, even federally with the federal Momnibus. Please make those phone calls to your senators. Make those phone calls to your House reps, federally and in the state, and make sure that you are understanding what impact this has for you, your family, and your community, your legacy.
It affects all of us. So
Yes.
thank you, thank you, thank you. If you want to get involved in the work that Community Hero Action Group does, such as this radio show or many of its other initiatives, please visit our website at communityheropa.org or email us at contactus@communityheropa.org. It takes all of us to get the work done. I'd like to thank the executive producer of the Her Health Matters radio show, Nicole-Keels McGruder, the founder and chief operating officer of Community Hero Action Group, and of course, thank you to WURD Radio's technical producer behind the scenes today, Ms. Rhonda Gibson. Thanks again for tuning in to this show. Join us on the fourth Sunday of next month for another episode dedicated to creating positive health and wellness outcomes in our community. I am Dr. Safiyya Shabazz, your host, signing off. Until next time, be healthy, be you, because your health matters. Peace. Thank you.
Thinking about quitting tobacco? It's easier when you